Can employers and employees really see eye to eye when it comes to expectations? Especially with today's work environment changing so fast. That's what we're going to be digging into on this deep dive on the FBS podcast. We put this together specifically for you because we know you're all about upping your game at work. And it's a direct follow-up to our recent discussion about what employers are looking for in their employees.
Exactly. We're trying to help both sides understand each other better, bridge that gap.
This one is based on what we heard from some really experienced forestry professionals. They were participating in the Forest Business School's Linchpin program, which, by the way, is designed for folks like you, mid-career, looking to boost their skills.
And we had really diverse group. Timberland managers, sawmill operators, people from state agencies, forest health specialists, association managers, family business owners. So we're getting a wide range of views from all over the industry.
We started off by asking the Linchpin folks what surprised them when they listened to a recording of business owners talking about their expectations. And it's interesting.
One of them, an association manager, said there were no surprises. At least from their perspective, it seems like there might already be some agreement on expectations between employers and employees.
So let's get to the heart of it. What are these employees expecting from their employers? One of the Timberland managers in the group really emphasized honesty, transparency, open communication. They even mentioned that their current employer actually shares budget expectations with the employees.
Wow, that's impressive. That level of transparency can go a long way in building trust and making sure everyone's on the same page.
Definitely. And we had a field researcher, someone relatively new to the professional world. Their main concern was finding an employer who wouldn't exploit them.
This highlights how important it is to do your research before you take a job. Look into the company culture. Read employee reviews. It can give you valuable insights into how a potential employer operates.
Absolutely. Another participant, an association manager, brought up the need for flexibility, especially when trying to juggle work and family. They actually switched to their current job for that very reason, the flexibility it offers.
Yeah, flexibility has become a huge factor for a lot of people, especially those with young children or aging parents. Employers who offer flexible arrangements have a much better chance of attracting and keeping great employees in today's job market.
For one of the sawmill administrators in the group, it all boiled down to employers walking the walk. When it came to their core values, they specifically mentioned helping others and pursuing excellence. But they were clear that it wasn't enough to just talk the talk. Companies need to live by those values.
This speaks to the growing importance of authenticity and integrity in company culture. Employees are more discerning now. They want to work for organizations that genuinely align with their values.
We also had a hardwood flooring salesperson who works in their family business. For them, the biggest plus was the open communication they have with their father, who owns the company. They feel comfortable raising any issues or concerns, which can be a bit trickier in a family-run business.
For sure, family businesses have their own unique dynamics. Navigating those relationships is essential for success, both personally and professionally.
This same salesperson also shared a challenge they're currently facing. One of their outside salespeople was caught attending a competitor's sales meeting.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Raises questions about loyalty competition, the lines between professional and personal relationships. It needs careful handling and communication.
A state lands forester in the group stressed how important it is for employers to support and encourage professional growth. They also talked about the challenges of working in a large organization with multiple districts, where inconsistencies in management styles can create confusion and frustration.
That's a common issue in larger organizations. Trying to balance standard procedures with the need for flexibility at the local level. It takes strong leadership and communication to make sure everyone is on the same page.
One of the forest health specialists who works for the U.S. Forest Service really appreciated their supervisor's leadership style. They felt empowered, they had clear expectations, but also the freedom to manage their own work without being micromanaged.
Now that's a great example of empowering leadership. Setting clear expectations, but giving people the autonomy to do their jobs without someone breathing down their necks.
And we had a wood product specialist also working for a state agency. They really valued the work-life balance their employer promotes. The agency actually encourages employees to pursue professional growth opportunities both within and outside the organization.
That's a smart strategy. Investing in employee development and supporting their well-being shows a commitment to their growth and success, which can lead to greater loyalty and engagement.
One operations manager in the group actually works for a close friend, which has its own unique set of dynamics. They acknowledge both the challenges and rewards of that close working relationship, especially as the company grows and needs more structured processes.
Yeah, personal relationships intersecting with work life definitely adds another layer. Open communication flexibility and a willingness to adapt are essential.
You said it. And then there was a Timberlands investment forester who'd seen firsthand what can happen with poor financial management. They really emphasize the importance of working for a company that's financially sound, has strong controls and clear procedures. They'd been through their previous employer going under.
It underscores the importance of financial health for both employees and employers. Transparency in this area helps everyone make informed decisions and contributes to the long-term stability of the company.
This same forester also spoke highly of their current company's culture. They emphasized the focus on work-life balance and how much they appreciated the recognition they get for their efforts.
It's great to hear about companies that get it, prioritizing their employees' well-being and creating a positive work environment. It makes a huge difference. When employees feel valued and appreciated, they're more likely to be engaged and do their best.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about what keeps these experienced professionals in their current roles. We know people often jump ship for better pay. So what's making these folks stay put?
That's the million-dollar question for employers who are struggling with retention. It's crucial to understand what drives employee loyalty if you want to keep your best people.
The hardwood flooring salesperson who works in their family business is super committed to the company. They see themselves staying there long term.
That deep sense of loyalty is often found in family businesses. It's a powerful motivator, creates a sense of shared purpose and commitment.
The operations manager who works for their friend feels the same way. They're really invested in the company's success.
It just shows how important strong relationships are in the workplace. When people feel connected and believe in what the company is doing, they're more likely to stay.
And the association manager brought up flexibility again, especially with their young family. Work-life balance is key.
Flexibility keeps coming up. It's clearly a top priority for a lot of people. Employers who understand that and offer flexible arrangements are going to have a much easier time holding on to their employees.
For the wood products, student loan forgiveness and a results-oriented work environment were big factors. They also mentioned they can't stand micromanagement.
This shows a growing trend. Employees want autonomy and trust. They want to be judged on their results, not on how closely they're being watched.
The State Lands Forester had several reasons for staying: job stability, the autonomy they have in their work, their family being happy where they live. It seems like it's often a combination of things that makes people stay.
You got it. Location, lifestyle, family considerations. All these things play a big role in career decisions. Employers who can offer a supportive and fulfilling work environment and a place people want to live have a real advantage.
The Timberlands investment forester actually talked about accepting a lower salary in exchange for the benefits of living in a desirable location. They've seen this happen a lot in their region, especially in fields like engineering.
This raises interesting questions about the trade-offs people are willing to make. What's more important, a bigger paycheck or a better quality of life? It's a balancing act, and it's something both employers and employees need to consider.
Now let's dive into something that often comes up in conversations about work expectations: generational differences. One of the wood products specialists, not even that young themselves, expressed frustration with some of their older colleagues who constantly complain about being busy, but then spend ages chatting about things that aren't work-related.
That sounds like a communication gap between generations. What one person considers busy, another might see as inefficient or even disrespectful of their time.
The group also talked about how much communication these days happens through texting, and the challenges it can pose for people who prefer more direct ways of communicating, like phone calls or face-to-face.
It reflects the overall shift towards digital communication. Texting is great for quick updates, but it can also lead to misunderstandings, especially when dealing with something complex or sensitive.
The hardwood flooring salesperson mentioned that they prefer phone calls for efficiency, but they have customers, especially younger ones, who insist on texting or email.
This is where being adaptable is so important. Meeting people where they are when it comes to communication, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone.
One of the Timberlands managers offered a completely different perspective. Having grown up without cell phones, they really value keeping personal time separate from work. And they've actually been criticized by their crew for not replying to texts quickly enough.
This just highlights how important it is to set clear expectations about communication, especially now that work and personal life are so blended. It's crucial to establish guidelines about when employees are expected to be reachable and what's a reasonable response time.
The state lands forester mentioned that their team went fully remote,
Hmm.
and they got pushback from some of their older colleagues who felt like important information gets lost without those in-person water cooler chats.
That's a common concern with remote work. How do you maintain those informal connections and keep information flowing when people aren't physically together? Companies have to get creative to make sure that happens.
It's interesting how the way we measure success is changing too. We're moving away from just clocking in and out and focusing more on results and outcomes.
It's partly because technology allows us to work more flexibly and independently, but it also puts more emphasis on accountability and making sure expectations are clear.
Let's move on to something that's always a hot topic: loyalty and commitment. How much loyalty should a company expect from its employees these days, especially with people changing jobs more often?
That's a tough one. Traditional ideas about loyalty are definitely being challenged as people prioritize their careers and personal fulfillment.
The wood products specialist pointed out how difficult it is for smaller businesses to expect the same level of commitment from employees that the owners have, especially when wages haven't kept up with inflation and the cost of living.
Absolutely. When employees are struggling to pay their bills, it's not realistic to expect them to put the company's needs ahead of their own financial well-being.
One association manager said they want their colleagues to strive for their full potential, but they believe that requires more positive reinforcement and recognition from supervisors.
Recognition and appreciation are powerful motivators. Sometimes a simple thank you or acknowledging a job well done can make all the difference.
The group also discussed some specific examples of employees leaving and whether employers were genuinely surprised by those decisions. One case involved a wood product specialist who left a state agency for a higher-paying, non-supervisory role with the U.S. Forest Service.
It shows that even employees who seem loyal might be willing to move on if the right opportunity comes along, whether it's for better pay, work-life balance, or career advancement.
The Timberlands investment forester, who'd seen their previous employer collapse, talked about how fleeting loyalty to a company can be. They said for them, loyalty to their own reputation and the respect of their peers are more important.
That's an interesting perspective. In today's world where companies can disappear overnight, individuals need to focus on their own professional development and building strong networks.
It makes you wonder, is it possible to be truly loyal to your team and have a strong work ethic without being tied to a specific company?
It's a really good question. It suggests maybe we need to think about loyalty in a different way, one that's more about professional values and relationships than blind allegiance to a particular employer.
It also makes me think about the potential downsides. Can you prioritize those forms of loyalty without jeopardizing your career or sacrificing your family's well-being?
Those are tough questions that everyone has to answer for themselves. It's a balancing act, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Depends on your individual circumstances and priorities.
Before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I want to share a story that came up in the Linchpin discussion. It was about a company owner who was getting ready to sell their business, but they wouldn't do it until they knew their core employees would be taken care of.
That's a great example of putting your employees first. It shows a level of commitment that goes beyond just money.
And speaking of commitment, the group also talked about an inspiring example of employee ownership. A sawmill owner who was retiring decided to transfer the remaining ownership shares to the employees through an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan.
What a fantastic way to ensure the company's legacy and the employee's future. It shows a deep level of trust and creates a real sense of shared ownership, which can lead to amazing things in terms of engagement and productivity. Those examples really show how important it is to remember the human side of things. Companies are made up of people, each one with their own values and goals and commitments.
Right, it's not just about the bottom line. It's about creating a work environment where people feel like they matter, that
Yep.
they're motivated, and that they can really contribute.
And as we heard from the Linchpin folks, that positive environment can look different in different places. It might be transparent communication or opportunities for professional development, or maybe it's flexibility and a good work-life balance.
The impact of technology is really interesting too, how it's changing what we expect at work and how we communicate, especially when you think about the differences between generations.
Yeah, we heard a lot of different views on that. Texting versus calling versus actually talking face-to-face. There's no magic answer.
It really comes down to communicating clearly, understanding each other's preferences, and being flexible.
Like if a customer prefers to text, even if you'd rather just pick up the phone, you got to be able to adapt and meet them where they are.
Exactly. Flexibility is key on both sides.
And to find that balance, Between what individuals need and what the company expects, it takes open communication and a willingness to compromise.
Going back to loyalty and commitment for a second. Remember the Timberlands investment forester who talked about how their previous employer went under? They really emphasized being loyal to your own reputation and the respect of your peers.
That's a good point. In today's world, maybe it's more important to focus on your own professional development and your network.
It's like loyalty to a company is temporary, but loyalty to your professional values and the people you work with, that's what lasts.
And those relationships can go beyond just one company or organization.
Makes you think, though, is it possible to be loyal to your team and do your best work without being tied to one specific company?
That's a big question. It makes you wonder if we need to redefine loyalty a bit. Maybe it's more about professional values and the relationships you build than just being dedicated to one employer.
And it also makes me think about the trade-offs involved. Can you really prioritize those things without maybe hurting your career or taking away from your family?
Those are tough choices, and everyone has to figure out what works for them. There's no right answer. It depends on your situation and what's important to you.
As we head into the final part of this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to consider. How can we, as both employees and employers, build a work culture where everyone knows what's expected? Individual contributions are valued, and there's room for growth and fulfillment.
That's the key question. In Part 3, we'll look at some potential answers based on what we learned from the Linchpin participants. Sounds like it takes a shift in thinking on both sides, employers and employees.
Moving away from just thinking about what you get out of it and more towards working together and supporting each other.
The Linchpin group talked a lot about how important transparency and open communication are. Employers being upfront about things like the budget company, goals, challenges. That builds trust, and it lets employees contribute more effectively.
When employees feel like they're in the loop and that their input matters, they're more likely to care about the company's success.
For sure, that open dialogue can really help bridge the gap and create a feeling of shared purpose.
Remember the Timberlands manager who said they appreciated their employer sharing budget expectations? That kind of transparency makes a big difference.
It sets a good example. Employees see their employer being honest, and they're more likely to do the same.
And the forest health specialist who really thrived under that empowering leadership style. That's another great example. Trust and autonomy lead to happier, more productive employees.
It's about finding that sweet spot. Giving people direction, but also giving them the freedom to use their skills and take initiative.
So it's about finding that balance between guidance and independence.
But it's not just about the work itself. We heard from a lot of people about how important work-life balance and flexibility are.
Especially for people who have families or who are trying to develop professionally outside of work.
Employers who get that and who are willing to support those needs, they're the ones who are going to attract and keep the best people.
And they're the ones who are going to build a culture where people feel valued as people, not just as workers.
It's all about creating a win-win situation where both sides feel like they're getting what they need.
Might take some compromise, though, some adapting. On both sides, employers might need to let go of some old ideas about loyalty and control, and employees might need to be more upfront about what they need and expect.
But if you can make it work, the payoff is huge. More productivity, higher morale, everyone feels better about their work.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about. It's clear that figuring out today's workplace, it's a two-way street.
And the conversation needs to keep going. The workplace is always changing, so we need to stay informed, be open to new ideas, and keep talking to each other.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into employee expectations, think about your own experiences. How can you help create a better work environment? It doesn't matter if you're the boss or the employee, we all have a part to play.
It's a shared responsibility. When we work together, we can create a workplace where everyone feels valued, respected, and ready to do their best work.
That's all for this episode of the FBS podcast. Hope you found it useful. Thanks for listening.
Hey, this is Steve Bick with the Forest Business School. Thanks for listening to the FBS podcast, and I hope you will subscribe. The truth is, these deep dives barely scratch the surface of some of the topics we cover in the Forest Business School programs, and the podcast is a way of reaching a wider audience. Check out my website at vtfbs.com for more information. Reach out if you want to talk about one of the FBS programs or have custom training or project needs that you'd like to discuss. Again, thanks for listening to the FBS podcast.